job. Yeah. All right, let's call this meeting the council workshop on the 2021 budget to order. And I'll just let you take over, Jenny.
Sounds great. Good evening, City Council. Thanks for meeting before our regular council meeting to talk a little bit more about our 2021 budget. So I have some more updated information for you from last month. If you recall, we talked mostly about wages and health insurance being a significant portion of the city budget. We wanted to focus a little bit on that and give you a little framework for what that will potentially look like for next year. What Maggie and I have done since then is we have met with all departments to do a preliminary budget review with them. That it's just a way to start the conversation, and it certainly evolves from there. So the information that I provided to you late last week is really a snapshot of a couple different scenarios that we have talked about as staff. So I will outline some of the, I'll say new items, but they're just items that are upcoming as far as, do we want to do this? Do we not want to do this? In the conversations we've had as staff, looking to get your feedback. And I've actually added a third option just because we should have a third option, I think. And so I'll explain that and we'll go through it and we'll go from there. Let me get this going here. Maybe. There we go. Perfect. So hopefully for tonight, I certainly want to receive more overall 2021 budget and levy comments and feedback from the council, similar to last month. We'll go through a relatively short list of new items that staff has talked about for next year. And then looking for hopefully some more specific feedback based on seeing now a full general fund budget, feedback on cost of living and health insurance contributions. As staff, we have to make decisions on our health insurance plan for our September renewal by tomorrow. So we're hoping for at least some sort of guidance from the council to help us make our decisions. So I know the timing's not great, but it's just as best as we can make it work. So what I'd like to do first is just talk about some of the new items that we have talked about as staff. And in your packet, I did provide this list. It's referenced after the budget. You have two versions of budget summaries, and then it's a budget line item worksheet. This should be the third page in each version of that. So I have outlined the same items on the screen here, so you can certainly follow along either way if you'd like. For the police department, and let me back up real quick. So when I was looking at what we consider new and significant budget items, looking at basically 1% of our levy is roughly $25,000. So I use that as a benchmark to say what sort of fits that criteria, or what should you focus on for your budget review for the upcoming year. So a couple of things in the police department that we talked about. They're looking at some equipment upgrades. I believe for it's either radios or cameras, and I don't recall offhand. I forgot to look. Cameras. Okay, police cameras for their squads. This would be a phased in approach with having 6 squad cars. They wouldn't do them all at once. They would phase them in. And so there was an allowance included in the budget for those upgrades. And then we have been talking about, actually for about a year now, the idea of an office manager for the police department. And as most things are occurring with all departments these days, it's getting the reporting requirements are becoming more complex and more detail oriented, and being able to manage those details for our officers takes more time and away from other just on the road interactions with citizens' duties. Good evening.
Good evening.
We just started, so And so we've been talking about that for about a year now and what that conceptually might look like. And we wanted to bring it forward to the council just to get your initial feedback, thoughts and perspectives on that. Councilmember Ryan might have some specific feedback just based on his profession in law enforcement previously. But that's something that we have been talking about. Is it a full-time employee? Is it a part-time? What would make sense? And if that's even something we want to do this year. I mean, we certainly realize all of those things are on the table, but we have to bring the council into that at some point.
So this
yes.
60,000, is that assuming, I mean, that's just, I know it's just an estimate, but is that assuming a full-time employee with benefits?
Yes,
full 9
yes, it
years?
is. I wanted to just at least put everything out there and then decide whether or not you scale back to a part-time, what that might look like. There's likely not 40 hours worth of work per week for the police department, in which case we certainly have opportunities to utilize someone on the clerk side of the building with all of our other departments and things like that. There's certainly opportunity there to cross-utilize staff, which is ideal in many ways to be able to share resources in that capacity. So any other initial questions? I mean, it's report processing.
This person proposed for the police department, does that have to be a sworn officer or could it be anybody?
It can be anybody. I mean, they go through, certainly all employees go through a background check. They might even go through a little more extensive based on the information that they're privy to in law enforcement, but it can be anybody.
Okay.
Yes,
It would just be administrative things. It's
correct.
How did they handle that before we moved people around over there? How did they handle it?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Maggie did it.
Maggie did it?
And
She does some of it now, some of the work now,
officers
yes.
Come in from the field and do the other stuff.
Yes, they do it on their computers and they work through the reports and things like that. So we have been discussing and working and trying to put together what kind of data points might be helpful for the council as well, as far as number of reports generated per year, things like that. Because I know sometimes that gives you just kind of a grasp of what that workload might look like. So we've been working on that as well. So. They did, yep. There is a draft job description in the budget packet, just for your reference, is something to have an idea of what the job duties are, so. Okay.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
So Maggie, with your kind of new responsibilities and roles and duties, is it harder for you to still have time to dedicate towards the police department?
I would, no, but I think Craig is looking for somebody to do more duties. Because some of the duties you can only do on that side of the building due to the security of the server and their software and things like that. So there's only so much I can do on my side of the building. So they're just kind of looking for more to keep the officers from, spending 20 minutes to burn a DVD. That's utilizing their time on the road instead of in the office. Some of those things.
Yeah, okay.
Any other just general questions about that item? We can certainly come back to things later. No? Okay. Public Works, Highways and Streets. This one, I don't think is a real issue. And what I mean by that is when I got to the point of putting all the packet information together late last week, I had some questions with the initial budgets, and I think it's more of we're trying to estimate and cover our supplies and equipment. And so Tom, Maggie, and I are going to meet next week because I don't think the initial ad of $50,000 is really an ad. I think it's just a matter of we weren't really sure what that number was going to look like, and there was a number that was plugged in. So based on the initial number, that's where we landed. But I'd like to just pause on that one and just say I don't think that that's going to be an ad of that much, and we'll come back and provide more information to the council in the future on that one. Recycling center. I'm actually gonna move forward on a slide here quick to talk about the recycling center. So in the draft budget summaries that I gave you, we included a $35,000 line item for the recycling center. Now, the county has approved to eliminate all their sites for 2021, except for the landfill and for the ideal township location. But they did provide an option for cities, if they wanted to have their own site, that they would contribute 50% of the cost to manage the site. They would provide that match to the city. The caveat with that is that you would have to use the hauler that they are going to contract with, yet to be determined, for that service. And if we have a preference as to which hauler we use for our own recycling center, that could be an issue, potentially. Waste Partners has quoted us $70,000 to provide recycling services for 2021. So hence the $35,000 in the budget. However, it could be $70,000. We don't quite know yet. Would the county fund Waste Partners if they weren't ultimately the one that was contracted with the county to provide service? Based on their policy, they've said no. Could we ask and see what they would do for us? We could ask, certainly. The question also becomes, with the recycling overall, it's outgrowing its current location. And we have talked about for some time, is there a benefit to moving it to a new location? We have looked at placing it adjacent to our sewer plant. We actually had county staff out there last fall to show them what that would look like and to show them the space and potential layouts. So there's certainly upfront capital costs, security, potentially staffing. I mean, all kinds of different variables that we just don't know yet what that would look like. Potentially this could be its own enterprise fund. It could generate revenue and we could have that structured as such. I just don't know what that fee structure would look like quite yet. I had asked the county to delay making a decision on their recycling program for 1 year to give the city time to figure out all of these questions, but they decided to move forward with their plan anyways for 2021. So it's a bit of a challenge right now. The city can also require haulers providing service within our city limits to offer recycling services, in which case, do we need a recycling center? So it's also something to think about. I know the city of Cross Lake, in light of all the changes that have happened with the SCORE program, I know the ordinance was at least on the council agenda. I assume it was passed. I don't know for sure. But they decided to take that approach, is to just require that recycling is a service provided. Not all roads in the city limits will be serviceable for recycling based on the size of the trucks, but I'm guessing 90 to 95% of the roads would be.
And then the providers probably charge something for that.
Yes, yeah. There's a fee for the service, but at least they have to be required to provide the service or offer the service. So as far as the recycling goes, it's a big question. And it's one of those things where, do we rush into something we don't really have? I mean, I have a lot more questions right now than answers, and concerned about putting too much money, although it's a great opportunity and think we could do something really great with it. Sort of what's the right timing and how much research do we need to do still? I know there's grants available to fund some of the upfront capital, like, build out of a center. We could pursue that too. It just takes time.
Have you considered, if we continue to do what we're doing, that people are going to find out that we're the only place around, and we're going to have more stuff come in than we're getting right now?
Yes,
Therefore, the
absolutely.
cost will go up, and then we'll be holding the bag, so to speak.
Yeah, certainly more trips for, let's just say, Waste Partners, to come in and to empty the dumpsters and things. We see that now and experience that now with the increase in just the seasonal population we have, and in our visitors, everybody I think is pretty familiar with it. So they definitely use it, which is great. But yes, more trips mean more cost. So
That's where the revenue generating process of it, that I talked to Terry over at Lake Shore, and if you've been to the transfer station in Ideal, they have a person there and they have their hours set. You pull in, you have to pay a fee, like an annual fee, to be able to come in there. And then you come in every time you bring stuff in, they go through and look at it. You know, what is it? It goes here, it goes there, whatever. Sometimes you get charged for it depending what it is. If it's like a dead washing machine, yeah, just go set it over there. That's fine. So, and like she said, if with Cass County, they're a recycling center there, but small behind their city hall. And she thought that, you know, people over there would definitely use ours. So that's where it's like, well, how much do you have to generate to break even? I mean, that would be, I mean, even if you didn't make money, if you at least broke even on all your operating costs. But Crow Wing County moved ahead with their thing and boom, done.
Is this a one time, one shot? You do it now, if you can't do it forever, or can you do it on a year by year basis?
As far as the county,
Mhm.
I believe we could request it any year. I think that's the intent of what they've decided on to provide that funding. I could certainly confirm that, but I didn't get the impression it was, if you don't do it this year, forget it. I think that's an option that they would consider.
Does that 35,000 change if you have somebody sitting at a gate watching, paying them?
Yes, certainly. That is just for the hauler to come and pick up the material.
So that number could potentially be quite a bit higher than 35,000.
Certainly. Yeah,
The
if
number-
you wanted staffed or anything like that, yeah.
The number also changes if our hauler, or the county's hauler, doesn't matter if we did that with the county. If our load becomes contaminated and they get it down to the processing center and they say, oh, too contaminated, it's got to go, we get to pick up the cost of the hauler going back down there and bringing it back to a landfill. That was what the county had said as well. So, I know I talked to Tom about it too and said that we definitely need this on the next Public Works agenda so we can start kicking around and putting it together. But
Tom, did I touch on all the high points with this? I mean, certainly if you have any feedback or other comments, I just, right. Right. I mean, I think ultimately it's from a budget perspective, does the council want us to pursue that conversation and look at potentially doing something? I think that's really where we want to be right now for that.
Right now, if we don't do anything, does ours go away completely?
Yes, unless we commit to paying for it, yes.
Okay.
What does ours cost to run on its own?
About 70,
70?
yeah.
This
That was
kind of-
that was about what the cost was for this year that the county is paying for this year.
But we can require carriers or providers to do curbside.
Yes,
Then it's going to be up to the homeowners whether they want to pay for it or not.
so we could do that. And if we wanted to like get out to the public, hey, do you guys want us to have a center here? This is what it's going to cost you. You know, this is what the setup's going to cost. This is what annual running's going to cost. We could always go, I hate to say it, we could go back to it. I mean,
certainly,
another
yeah.
year, like
Yep.
2022, we could, if that's what everyone in the community wanted, then we could do something like that. But in the meantime,
The problem is if you require the hauler to offer to the residents recycling, that means they have to have another can there. And
however that
the
hauler,
regular truck can't pick it up, because they have to send a second truck. And a lot of people would say, I don't want to spend the extra
but just
money.
throw it away.
Yeah,
Cheapest thing to do is
Give
just throw your
something to-
recyclables
You do
away.
that, they're gonna charge everybody
yeah,
the fee whether you use it or not.
and everybody's going to get mad. Yeah.
So for this coming year, it might just be wise to think about splitting it with the county. $35,000,
Okay.
right? That's what it'd be.
Yes,
Yeah.
assuming they would be
35,
fine with that.
40, 30, whatever. And then maybe take a look at it upcoming.
Okay.
You know, the idea of the investment into a facility and all that, now you're committing to something long-term, you know, and I'm not, then if the city would get into that and if 2 years down the line and go, this isn't working out so good, now we're out all the money. And if we can, at least for a year or two, or until the city feels like it should really, you know, take a hard look at something different, it may just be wise to, that would be my thinking, just be wise to work with the county and then give it, you know, have more time to
Yeah, we're a
think
little
about what to do.
hamstrung on time here to make
Yeah.
pretty big decisions. So can we, this maybe is a really stupid question. Can we just charge a fee to all citizens of Nisswa, whether it's $5 or $10 or whatever?
Like an annual.
Yeah,
On the
that
property
gets
tax.
assessed on the property tax.
I don't know that it's any different.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah,
they do a solid waste. I don't know if we can separately
$5.
identify it. I don't know if we can separately identify it like the county does with the solid waste. I mean, in theory, it's really no different than the levy if
Right.
we're spreading it out across
True.
everyone anyways.
yeah, good point.
But I see, you know, trying to just say this is for something specific. I understand that.
Well, with that, we're almost looking at, you know, I think 35 is probably a safe bet.
Mhm.
You're looking at, I would say 50 would be a realistic
Mhm.
with everything, and that's a 2% according to the numbers, 2%
Mhm.
to the levy.
Yeah.
So,
Well, if you took the 35, which is 50%, and you got in touch with our present hauler, and you found out how many contaminated loads they had to go down, pick up, and take to the landfill, what was that cost? You could add that to the 35.
Yes.
And that would
Yep.
be because I mean, I don't see the number really going up much more than it is now. Because but it, you know, that'll give you a better budgetary dollar as opposed to having to figure out where you're gonna take it from halfway through the year. So 35.7, and I don't know, I know he has that data. He brought it to the one meeting. So whatever that was, if it was, you know, $20,000, okay, then you know you're gonna need 55.7, you know.
Why
Okay.
does the county care who the hauler is? I guess that's maybe a redundant or
I think they're,
I think it's more of just a way of being, just having a process where it's just, we know we're dealing with one company and we're not potentially dealing with different companies for, you know, depending on the city or the situation. So I think it's a efficiency thing on their part.
I look at it as a little bit of a black hole. Once you start, it's hard to stop, and I guess my feeling would be not to do it,
not to do what?
not to spend the 35,000, not participate.
I think if we don't do something, then there's just gonna be a bunch of recycling/garbage left behind in the fire department.
And other places.
Yeah.
There would for a certain period of time, certainly, until kind of figured it out, but
It's important to provide some sort of service.
I'm wondering if we don't go to the haulers providing it this year with the idea that we need feedback from the citizenry so they understand that, you know, okay, I mean, I got no problem with the recycling center and having it available to them. That's great. No problem whatsoever, but there's a cost involved now. And if nothing else, maybe they can put the pressure on the county to say,
Do we know when the county's gonna make their decision on
they did.
with Waste Partners?
Oh,
I don't know when. I can find out. I don't know if they've gotten that far to bid out for 2021 for their sites yet.
like, I
can
kind of
certainly
agree
put
with Don on that one, just knowing where I think where I would like to see the budget end up, we're already 2% higher to go. So,
Okay, I can find out for sure. I think that might impact the decision. If either way, if they say yes or no, we'll pay for half depending on the hauler situation. Probably good to know.
well, even if, you know, if they were willing to pay for the contamination charges, so if something's contaminated and instead of us having to pick that tab up, mean, they kind of sprung this on us last minute, the way I look at it. It's like, well, how are we, now we're scrambling to come up with something, and we're in the same boat they are as far as the COVID and everything else, you know, trying to think about it. I don't see why, you know, if they would even do that for 1 year, then, but
Well, if the county's made their decision already, it's gonna be pretty hard to change that. You know, it is probably, in my view, unfortunate that they didn't spend a year out trying to figure out what to do with the problem with the whole county. But now that they basically made a decision, it's gonna be, it's an uphill battle.
Mhm. Yep.
And, you know, if, you know, we need to take care of the recycling stuff. We just do. I mean, it just gets buried in the ground. It's gonna cause more problems in the future. We need to take care of what we, you know, and there's also, we have a lot of summer residents, you know. You can see the need. I mean, you can see the need at the recycling center. We've got, you know, people are looking for place, they want to drop off their appliances and all kinds of things that aren't supposed to be there. You know, the need is bigger than it is not.
But Fred, at the same time, why is it just Nisswa? Why not some of the other cities are participating in this too? Why is it us that have to spend the money?
But they might be having the same conversations as we are, correct?
Right.
I don't think
If
so.
they want to keep recycling in their town,
Right.
or are we the only ones having it that we know of?
I really don't know. I mean, certainly they're all in the same situation as, you know, determining what, if
We went
anything, they
from
want to
6
keep.
to 2, didn't they?
Mhm.
10,
Yeah, so it's
10? I thought there was 10.
the last time we had a, excuse me.
Sorry?
I'm sorry. Do we know what Pequot or any other communities are thinking about doing? I mean, Lakeshore is different counties, so. they're
Correct.
close, but they're a different county.
To my knowledge, nobody is talking about putting in their own or, you know, keeping their own at this point.
And on Pequot, for the most part, we used to haul a lot of stuff from the city. We would just haul it over to the transfer station because it's right there. If we look at, if we want to do something with recyclables, and I agree we do, we have to. And with the summer residents, a lot of them use the recycling center as their garbage center too. They don't have a garbage hauler, and then they pay the fee that's in the box there, the honor box. And that's why I think if we look at it from if we had time to look at it from that standpoint and say, okay, can this become a money make or a break even deal where we get people bringing those white appliances here and dropping them off. We charge them whatever each time they come in the gate. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. I think Ideal operates, I think 5 days a week in the summer or 4, something like that. And it's only a couple days a week in the off season because, and I've been there a number of times. It's nice, it's convenient, it's easy, and it's a lot cheaper than running to the landfill. One of the reasons Nisswa is kind of in the pickle is we get a lot. I mean, what was it, the last public works meeting we had when he came and talked to us? Our hauler right now, I think the dump handles more tonnage in a year than we do. And I thought we were number 2, Tom? Yeah, so because we draw so many people from over, that's why I called Terry, was, you know, she said there's a lot of people summer cabins just like us. And it's like, boy, to have a place to come and not have to, and you know, I got a garbage hauler for 3 months. I can just bring my stuff here. I don't have to mess with all this stuff at the cabin, blah, blah, blah. And I know storm cleanup, things of that nature, a bit ideal. Why I was able to bring a bunch of storm damage up there through the brush in one pile, drop the big logs off in another pile, and they'd have the work release from the jail guys come up every so often, bucket up, split it up, and then they'd give it to people that need it or sell it or whatever. So, I mean, the potential to have something that breaks even, I think, is probably there, but do we have, it's getting all the numbers together to be able to, so we can make a decent decision on it, get a little public input even in the meantime, but we're kind of back behind the wall, but it's for this year. That's why I don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe we should kind of look to keep moving along just because of time and.
Yep.
Well, can we get some more? We should probably hold a workshop or something and just have more time to discuss it. And maybe, you know, I don't know if we can get some feedback or get some information from Ideal, you know, how does their program work?
Right.
And how financially feasible is it? You know, we can find out, we can explore those, you know, those things that are going on and see where we can, I think that'd help us make a decision.
And that was the goal of having more time, hopefully, was to be able to look at that. So we can certainly do that, and then we will bring some more information back and take a look and see.
When the county makes a choice of callers as well.
And we'll bring it up
Correct,
at the
yep.
public works meeting next month too. So knowing what everybody's saying, kind of guide the conversation that way and try and get numbers.
Perfect, thank you. The next item, Parks Community Center budgets, the transfer. So those budgets are created, and then the gap in what is generated from their program revenues is driven through the general fund. So we provide that difference. And so there's a $20,000 increase from last year. There's really no one line item specifically. There's nothing new or significant. It's a handful of small things that just added up to that. So it's about 1%. So I wanted to include that in there. Certainly we'll have more meetings with Matthew just to be sure that his numbers for next year are, you know, still accurate and things like that. But that is one item on the line items that we have. And then the last item, I know it's a small amount, but I wanted to be sure that the council saw this, had input on this, and get, you know, get some feedback on it, is commission and committee pay. Currently, our planning commission receives compensation for the meetings that they attend. Our other committees and commissions do not. And I received a request from one of those members to have the city consider that. So for the Public Works Committee and the Parks Commission, I included a $50 stipend per month. I actually think I did 13 for the year, just in case there was a special meeting or something like that, for the members, and that totaled to $7,000. So one, that's a question I certainly would appreciate feedback for. If you think that would be a value to provide, is a small token of thanks for their time and effort. But that was a request I received, and so I said I would do some digging and figuring out what the numbers are. Any initial thoughts or?
So that would be Public Works and then Parks?
Parks,
Commission?
yes. I mean, certainly not, I mean, make or break, probably within the budget regardless, but certainly want, is that as a change to operations? Want to get your feedback. I might have cut you off. I apologize. Mayor Heidman.
I was just going to say there again, I think that might be a good workshop conversation. You know, I mean, I think just some evaluation of the groups, the committees, you know, what are we getting from them? What are we expecting from them?
Right.
You know, how much effort are they putting in? I mean, I just, you know, personally, I'm a believer in having conversations and, you know, just have things thrown at us here and, you know, and make a decision without really giving thought to what are we, you know, what are we getting, what are we asking, and what are we getting, and then are they being compensated properly? That'd be my thoughts
Sure.
about it.
Okay.
Because it's easy just to say, oh yeah, throw some money at it, or it's easy to say, no, we're not gonna.
Yep. No, I certainly appreciate the.
But then there's no, you know, there's no conversation and context behind the decision.
Right.
That would be important.
Right. Okay. Okay, no, that's fine. Those are that's the short list, I'll call it. We got the recycling. Okay, so the 3 budget scenarios that I referenced, you have 2 provided in your packet, and I summarized them on the screen. I'll walk through each one of them with you. So all 3 scenarios include the same 2% cost of living, and as we talked about last month, the 7.41 health insurance contribution increase. There were 3 different scenarios for health insurance that we talked about last month. I can pull that slide back up on the screen if we need to later. But so all 3 scenarios have the same assumptions as far as staff wages and the health insurance piece goes. So the first scenario in your packet, it's referenced as current. It's basically a roll forward of our current budget. And it includes all of the new items that we talked about, except for the add of a police department office manager. And an adjustment will likely take place for the public works supplies and maintenance line item. I said that would just ended up looking a little bit weird, and I think it's overstated. But with the recycling center, the $35,000, the police equipment upgrade, couple items there, the parks community center budget, and the commission and the committee pay. The budget would increase 3.74% and the levy would increase 7.13%. The second option I included in your packet includes the same staffing assumptions on the left, and it includes a new police department employee and everything else. And okay. My eyesight is not what it used to be. What is that, 5.71? And 9.55, I believe, if I recall.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah.
So that is basically any and everything that's in the budget. The third, which I called alternate 2, is the commission pay, a corrected number for public works supplies and equipment, and nothing else. So no recycling, neither of the police department items. As a quick side note, the police department does have a money market account, has approximately $90,000 in it. And so if there were smaller-ish equipment needs, such as this one, I thought there was an opportunity that maybe they could utilize those funds for this type of purchase. So I took all of that out and we landed at a budget increase of 1.1% and a levy increase of 3.88%.
So say that last one again, that included
The commission and the committee pay
and the employee,
and
for
the,
police department?
no,
No employee.
no employee.
Okay,
No, nothing else outside of the current employee information on the left, the 2% and the health
Right.
insurance, and the commission and the committee pay, but neither of the police department items, no recycling.
no recycling, okay.
Correct, yes.
And I just, I don't know if I missed something before I got here or not, but with the police department items, it would certainly seem like if I was not even aware that that fund existed. I probably missed it in previous conversations or something, but that would certainly be a very appropriate place for that to come from.
Right.
The local, the Legion and the Lions, they're very willing to help.
Mhm.
Police department could do their own fundraiser if they really got to that point.
Certainly.
Are you speaking for the cameras or the employee?
All of it. Well, I'm not the employee. I'm not.
No, that would-
That's a
in favor of that.
We haven't talked much about the police department fund. The last time we used it was when we purchased the body cameras. That was maybe 3 years ago now. And nothing else has been utilized since that time. But getting into the details and kind of working through that, I was like, oh wait, we might have some money set aside, and certainly opportunities to use it is appropriate for those types of things. So.
Definitely thinking more equipment type purchases.
And I would agree with that, equipment type things, because that's the right place for it.
Because there
go
are,
ahead.
with that and other opportunities there are in the community, with groups that really, look to help the police department and fire department
Yes,
with things, and they kind of pride themselves in that. I think that's a good place to research.
certainly. Great, thank you. The next slides I have really are recaps of our wages and health insurance contribution conversation from last month. So I'm really looking for either we can recap those quickly if there's interest, or I'm looking for feedback on any of the scenarios, any of the, I'll say, new line items again. And then just to reiterate, it would be great to know if at this point you're comfortable with my cost of living and health insurance contribution assumptions, or if we need more information.
Two quick things before you get there. Or
Yeah.
Just one quick thing, sorry. You'd mentioned the highways and streets, the 50,000
Yep.
is skewed. I mean, do you have a general idea of what the real number might be?
I think the real number, an increase of probably around 8,000.
Okay.
First, just additional supplies, the needs just kind of grow a little bit every year. But I think what happens is we're heavy in using that in the winter and the beginning of the year. And so we saw a lot of activity in that account. We thought, oh, we may be really short on the budget, but I don't know that we really tap into that much during the summer months. So I think the number is, could use an adjustment, as it typically will go up a little bit, but not to that degree.
Okay.
Well, my general impression is that I'm not going to vote for anything that's going to give us any more money than we had last year. I want a zero increase, or even less than that. I still want to take a look at the idea of taking some money from the unallocated and put it in. When the virus hit, a lot of people lost their jobs. They can't pay their bills. And we're talking here from anywhere from 7 to 10 to 3.8% increase in our levy. I don't think that's right. And if we could only do it for a year, take some money out of the unallocated, get it down to where it should be to help people out, and let's see what happens next year. Anything over a zero increase, I'm not going to vote for, just up front.
A zero increase to the levy, meaning if we used funds to balance it.
And that's a slippery slope, backbeating the expenses.
1 year to help people out and see what happens at the budget in 2022.
Well, I hear what you're saying there, Don, and I'm not a person who favors levy increases or tax increases, but there is the realistic factor of that. There is some costs, and that we do need to look at. If a couple, I'm not even sure, it'd probably be nice to know, but 1% increase in property taxes isn't going to make or break somebody. Having a good job will, but the extra $50 on their property taxes isn't going to kill anybody. And if there's somebody that needs that, I'd like them to call me, because I'll help them out. But, we have to be careful of how we do things and how we manage things. I'm not saying, I would like to see zero. I'm not sure that that's realistic.
But we can do that.
Right. But we can also look at things that we spend money on, and areas that go up year after year after year after year. We all probably have something that we could say, does the city really need to do this? Do we need to keep growing this area? Do we really need this service the way we have it today? It's easy to keep adding, and I think that's one thing that you're opposed to, and I'm opposed to as well. But we rarely take a look at what specific things can we cut out of the budget? How can we lower the budget? What it usually ends up being is, you start out at 7 to 9%, and you take out some of the things that really probably aren't that needed. And then we end up with some smaller number of an increase. But we go through our budget, and we rarely take out anything or make it smaller.
Well, Mr. Mayor, we can always justify, we need X, we need Y, we need Z. It's only a few dollars here, a few dollars there. It all adds up. If we
That's
do
right.
have the capability this year to take money out of we have millions of dollars in the unallocated fund. We can take $50,000, $100,000 out of a several $1,000,000 fund to help people for 1 year. And I think we should do that. This is an unprecedented year for us and everybody. We should really be looking at that. I appreciate your comments. I just don't agree with it for a year. That's all.
In the past, it's not to be argumentative, but in the past, I believe you were a firm believer in don't use that money for things that cover up what the true cost is. And now this year, I guess to help me and probably help you and help the rest of the council, how much does 1% increase in the levy and our budget, how much does that affect property taxes? Is it $5 or is it
Great question.
$500? Those are both extremes, but if we had that, then we could answer that question. How much help is it? And
Sure.
I certainly would not want to increase things because of that, because it was like, oh, it is only a low number, if that would be the case. But I think it helps put in perspective the discussion.
Certainly.
So I would like to see some sort of a answer to that so that we can, because it does seem that has come up a little bit in the past. It's floated around, and I don't think we really know what that is. And I think it'd be important to know. Gary?
Also, are we keeping the transfer from spirits consistent to next year? And is there an opportunity to get more?
Great questions. And I didn't speak to that, so thank you. We have kept the transfer the same as it is for 2020, so we had increased it from 2019, so we're at 260,000. I did keep it the same. I think as we get through the July month for sure, we'll be able to see how Spirits is doing. They are having a very good year, all things considered, and to see how things are going at the Pickle now that they've reopened and have activity again. So we could certainly look at that as an opportunity to utilize those funds would be a good option to look at. And potentially there will be dollars there. They were successful last year as well, and I think Spirits is doing even better this year. So
Maybe
that's
do
what
like
that's for.
If we did something along what Don wanted, the 60/40.
Maybe we should we could certainly take a look at that. To me, it would seem more appropriate to use the profits from the liquor store, because that is what the primary purpose of that is to be used for city expenses.
Right.
The unallocated funds, I think we really need to have a conversation about that sometime and decide what we want to do with that. I probably would stick to what some of the thinking was last year and previous, and that is not wise to use that money to offset costs for a given year. It would be better for it to come out of the spirits fund or something like that. That's more appropriate, I think. That's my feel.
Okay.
And then another whole discussion is the unallocated funds, what to do.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I don't disagree with what Don's saying either. It's a lot of money just sitting there.
Yeah.
And I even think our auditor said that you might have more than what you should.
Let's keep this moving along,
Yeah.
Jenny, so we can get through
Sure,
this.
ready. What I'm hearing from the council is that for next month, we should get into a deeper dive of the recycling issue, and we can put together some more information so you have that to make some decisions whether we want to include it or not. I will work on some tax valuation impacts for levy compared to levy. So we could say, per $100,000 of home, here's what your cost would be. I can work with Springstead to do that, help me with that part of it. I think those are the big two things, take away from that. And then we'll just take the rest as it comes. I mean, the other items are a little bit, we can work through them.
Yeah, so you can tweak that highway number.
Yep.
Take the equipment upgrades out for
Okay.
the police department. Yep, okay.
I think, I don't know I've heard what Don has said. I don't know what the others are thinking. Well, John kind of mentioned a little something, I would certainly like to hope we could be somewhere around 3%. I think that is to an extent kind of what cost of
Yeah.
living increases, our cost of, goods and services increases. I certainly could make an argument to be less than that, because our budget is growing rapidly, and the bigger the number gets, the bigger the 3% and 5% and 2% are as well.
Mhm.
And they come to a point where we want to have some hard workshop discussions about scaling back things. So, anything else from us this evening?
Just any quick feedback as far as the cost of living and health insurance. I'm just looking at the numbers. Between the two, it's about a 1% increase to the budget based on those two assumptions. Are we in the ballpark generally? I mean, obviously, we can't get final until we have a contract settlement with Teamsters and other things that are going to take place. So we're going to have to work through, but it's between those two items, it's a 1% impact to the budget.
Well, and I think, personally, I think that's something that, I shouldn't say personally, I think that's something that, every year the council, there's at least been some mention of the fact that how much longer can the city keep paying and paying and paying and paying to this stuff. And, one option is, there's three options. Either we keep paying the increases, we say, no, we're going to split it, or three, find a way to cut staff and give it to the others. I think that's just real honest discussion right there.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah, every employer struggles with this every year, and every employer is having to either push those costs onto their employees or make changes. And
Yeah.
we're no different in that aspect. So the two options that you talk about, and that 7.4% or whatever that is.
Yep.
Just briefly, if you could recap, what is that? Where did we end that last discussion?
The 7.41 is the average increase percentage of the three plans we have.
Okay,
So we did that 5% increase scenario, just a $50 flat, and then this is a different way to look at how this might work.
so under this, what are we doing? I guess that's what I'm asking. Is that we're contributing
So right now, the two numbers at the top, the 782 and the 1207, that's the current contribution.
Yep.
And so the 7.41 those numbers would increase by 7.41%,
Okay, gotcha.
which is an average. The impact to staff is anywhere from about, I think it was 5 to 12%, because we have age-based premiums, so it's not a straight, every person experiences the same increase, it just depends. But the 7.4 was an average of the three plans. So we were trying to meet in the middle and split it, so to speak. So if you have any other feedback or thoughts, please reach out to me. I know you will, but I'll just mention that, and we can conclude and be done for today. If that works.
So is this officially open? So do we need the official? Okay.
Yes.
Somebody motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All
Aye.
5 minute, 6 minute break, 7 minute break, and then we'll start the council meeting. Something else that'd be really interesting to kind of know would be,